So the first thing that we like to start with is we like to start with colors. We feel like by defining color palettes, by defining the actual set colors that you all use, we can create a lot of continuity and consistency through the messaging. Now, we had a couple of people that talked a little bit about some of those colors and ideas, and you know, we went back and we looked, and more or less there was a whole lot of green used, but there was never a consistent green used. It was all different shades, and as long as it was green, it counted. Well, we wanted to kind of define those a little bit more, and then also we wanted to hone in on some of the colors of the blues as well. We feel like that story of the spring and the role that the spring and the park plays in the story of the community is an important one. But I feel like we also got some very, very important insight from the students we met with yesterday. We have to be realistic about the impact that that park has on future generations. And because of what we have allowed to happen to it, and because of the maybe not doing as good of a job as we should, telling some of the origin stories of this community, the future generations don't have the same connection with that park that the latter generations do. So we need to work on both enhancing the connection with the park and telling the story better. But with that, we landed on a 5-color palette. Everything on the screen is probably a little brighter than it is in reality. But we picked a couple of different, we picked a darker green. We've got a complementary brown. These colors on the bottom are actually colors that are going to be used more by the city government. They're the ones that the government itself and the functions of the government are going to use. And then some of the brighter shades of blue and then kind of almost a blue-green are the ones that we'll be able to use in a destination type identity. Now, what do you mean by that? This community has had a town logo for a really long time. And our job is not actually to come in and replace that. I think many of you will be very glad to know that when the presentation ends, you are still going to have the gazebo. The gazebo image is not going anywhere. There's a beautiful, image of it in the welcome mats here and the rug in the center of the mayor's office. You don't have to go buy all new stuff at the end of the presentation. All that still exists, but that represents the government. We need a destination identity as well. An identity that the business community and the event organizing community can share to build positive brand equity for this place. And we need just enough separation between that government and that destination identity that it's shielded a little bit from some of the things, when the government is in charge of picking up the garbage, you're not always the most popular people, and every decision you make isn't always the most popular. So you create a little bit of buffer there. It's just like how colleges and universities have athletic logos and academic logos. So we start off with those color palettes. The colors are going to be very strong connectors as we go through that system. And then we selected 2 typefaces. You all right? Yeah. All right. So the typeface was the place that we had the opportunity to decide, are we going to go really, really contemporary or really, really traditional? Well, which one is appropriate for Williamston? Traditional, exactly. It doesn't mean that you can't be contemporary and progressive, but the personality of these typefaces is hugely influential. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to create a system where these typefaces allow us to connect the dots. So we selected a serif traditional typeface as our primary typeface. Believe it or not, a lot of these look very much alike, but there are individual details about letters that really make these typefaces different. We went through a lot of different typefaces before we landed on one where Williamston appeared the way we wanted to. Now granted, we could go pick a pretty typeface and say, yeah, it looks great, but your name's a little funny, let's change your name. But nobody's ever let us do that yet. So we had to deal with what we were given. I think that the traditional serif typeface is a good one, and then the secondary is actually a typeface called Origins. It's a script typeface. Now I have to admit, you have to be very, very sensitive when you use typefaces like this. They do not have the highest level of legibility. This is a typeface that we selected to be able to deliver secondary messages. Our tagline, some of our brand extension with events. It gives us some real personality, but just because it's a pretty typeface doesn't mean that your pretty community has to be communicated that way. So that's why it's that secondary. So we've got our colors, we've got our typeface, jump across. Then the next thing that we do is we create a thing called a brand statement. And this brand statement is our attempt to take the stuff that we heard you say was important and stitch it together into a messaging system that allows us to move forward. So I'm going to do my best to read this for you. We are Williamston, South Carolina, named for a man who discovered our natural mineral springs and created one of the nation's first public parks. We have long believed in the healing value of faith and the rejuvenating power of nature. From these springs grew a town where women were educated, businesses grew, and textiles were rolled off the line. Much like that cloth, we are a community that is tightly woven. Our fabric is our family, faith, friends, and the arts and architecture that weaves authentic richness into a place we call home. Opportunities continue to bubble up. Although many call us a bedroom community, we aren't satisfied with that. And we have crafted a vision for our own prosperous future. We want our focus to continue to include the dining room, the family room, and the classroom. Williamston affords you the chance to live life where hope springs eternal. We invite you to explore the place we call home. Walk our trails, hear the gurgle of our springs, and feel the warmth of our people. You'll discover what we mean when we say, historic Williamston, spring to life. So that gives us that opportunity to start to take those things that you said over and over again. And this whole action really is an action statement. This is a place where you can spring to life. Opportunity is here. So many opportunities abound. In the meeting that we had last night with the public, you kept going back to the spring. And you went back to the spring as an origin point. But you also went back to the spring for several qualities that we felt like were extremely important for your community. Purity, life. It is the birthplace of the economy. It is also a connection between town and nature. It creates these extremely interesting dynamics that you are still using today with your trail systems, creative reuse of buildings. Imagine taking something that used to house the National Guard and now will be the home to art. It is a really, really interesting place, and you kind of pull all that together. So I will tell you that the team worked really, really hard on figuring out how to stitch it together in a simple statement that would allow us to jump forward. So we've seen the colors, we've seen the typeface, we've heard the message, and then how do we pull all that together? Well, I have to tell you, we were all over the place with this. We knew that some people, well, it's just not right if it doesn't have the gazebo on it. Well, I have to tell you, I'm going to be completely honest with you. You know, we heard about the gazebo, and we went out there to take a picture of the gazebo. And the gazebo is surrounded by wrought iron. The gazebo no longer sends off the exact same message of accessibility that it once did in all of the illustrations that we use to connect with that building. But the thing that we really connected with was we connected not as much with the building, the structure, but the spring that inspired it. The water that flowed from it, the energy that comes from beneath, comes from within. And what we decided to do was we decided to create a more contemporary image that was inspired by that water imagery, but also could come to represent almost a stylized icon of a W, and could kind of represent that spring. So when we pull, and I will say, I always like to give a little disclaimer here. I'm getting ready to show you an image that we created of the place that you call home. So when we first put it up, it's going to feel weird. You're going to be like, I don't know about that. Give us time. Don't throw chairs till the end of the presentation, okay? So when you pull it all together, this is what we landed with. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about it. It started as a single drop, and then it began to have these drops overlaid upon it. It gives us layers and textures. It gives us that sense of being interwoven. But it also gives that connection of those kind of three peaks. Now, I want to kind of go through, and because it really starts to take hold when you start to look at the different systems here. Now, I want to point one thing out that we did. We specifically decided to go with the concept of historic Williamston instead of downtown Williamston. And we did that for a very specific purpose. You know, you've got this Main Street organization. You also have several different organizations, whether you're putting on festivals like Spring Water Festival, whether you're GWBA that's been around for years and years and years, who are all promoting this place. Williamston simply is not large enough to warrant a separate brand just for a downtown. It doesn't make sense here. But anything that is a historic asset of the core of the community is a historic asset of all of the community. So we strategically landed on this concept of historic Williamston because what it allows the Main Street organization to do is to work within their area of focus while truly creating a brand that nurtures the entire city and town. So that's one of the things we wanted to focus in on. Now, from that, I want to put that on hold for a second because, again, this is the marketing logo. But then we jump over to the city. I told you it didn't go away. The gazebo's still there. Now, what we did was we asked some folks around the city if we could get a copy of the seal. Because we had a couple folks say, do not change this logo. Now, we got a couple different versions, as is typical. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to give you a good, clean version that you could use to produce no matter what you were doing. So what we see on the left is the version that we were given. What you see on the right is a slightly modified orientation where we made it a little more ornamental, give it a little more weight. We cleaned up that center graphic, and then we changed this typeface around it so that it now matches the same typeface as the overall system. Now, one of the nice things about this is now what we call vector art. If you're a nerd like me, that means that you can take this and you can blow it up to the size of a water tower and it never changes quality. So from that, the other thing that's nice about this is it works very well as a one color or a black and white. And then it's very important for us to know that even though this is an important image to represent the town, the name Williamston is only the height of that band in comparison to the overall composition. So we wanted to show you how you could couple that seal with the word type. So now all of a sudden you're creating better connectivity. You need this option as well. This allows you to be able to communicate with the seal as a standalone logo, but also tied in to the word type. So that starts to give the town the communication tools they need to be able to talk about themselves and what they do. And then Randy went through and even took some of the things that you all have, like the Municipal Center reservations form. And this is water service facts. Just showing how carrying those through, like I said, water service information isn't always the most fun info. It's not the same as telling somebody about a festival. So being able to connect those functions of the government underneath that identity. Now, to me though, where it really starts to get fun is when we get to the point that we call brand extension. And brand extension is where we now have the colors, the typeface, we've seen those primary destination and organizational identities, and we start to look at the other groups that exist. So for example, GWBA, they can keep the exact same picture that they've had, and I downloaded 2 logos off of their website yesterday. And in the 2 logos, they had different typefaces for the name GWBA. And that's pretty typical. It's just one of those things where it's not necessarily that important here. We've gone through, we've adapted that to the same unifying typeface, and we've created a horizontal and a vertical version for that organization. Main Street Williamston. So now what we've done is we've taken that simplistic icon of that water drop and we've adapted it and changed it from the 3-pronged W into a 4-prong that focuses in on the 4-point approach of the Main Street model. So they now have 4 colors that represent the organization. We see an adaptation of the tagline into adding life to downtown. So now you can see where they're taking simple concepts from that tagline and we're expanding that out in the messaging. And then we're taking each one of those colors and letting them represent the different 4-point approach and the committees that make that organization up. And then from that, once you have a logo like that, you can start to do things like PowerPoint template backgrounds and your business stationery that convey a professional look and feel. Now, there are a couple things that when you do a project like this, a lot of times you kind of ask forgiveness instead of permission. And this next one is one of those, and I apologize. It has to do with the armory. And I was sitting there yesterday, and I was like, wait, so it's an armory, and you're turning it into an art center. It's an armory, and you turn it into an art center. It's an artery. And, you know, the thing that is so interesting about that is your venue that you have makes your location truly unique. So it made me think of one that I had seen in Springfield, Vermont. And it was simply called The Vault. And it was an art center in an old bank. And their gallery space was in the old bank vault. But that simplicity and that really connecting the center, because if you simply call yourselves an art center, then all of a sudden you're on the exact same playing field as every other art center in the community or really in the state. And art centers and performing art centers can be kind of scary venues to be compared to, because the Peace Center for Performing Arts is technically an art center. So being able to have a marketing angle on the naming of those amenities is really important. So we wanted to just throw that out as an idea for you to think about, but also just show how, as you go through and you look at those, you can bring in different colors, you can start to adapt the simple elements of the system to be able to expand your message. The Christmas lights in the park. And we took that element out of and turned it into the Christmas light bulbs. This next one is my favorite, y'all. Boo in the park. Take it, turn it upside down, turn it into ghosts. So the thing, again, that is so nice about it is the simplicity of the graphic elements allows you the ability to make it mean more by connecting to more and more of these events. Spring Water Festival is another one that, it's a really, really great festival. They've actually had an identity that's been around for a very long time. What Sean did with this was he took that element and he repeated it all the way around the rim. He wanted to create something that had this really solid, self-contained feeling to it. So being able to create that border out of that element, again, takes it and pushes it farther, and then having the stacked versions in the reverse and the standard all help to kind of push that forward. Then you can start to see this contemporary looking image can couple with images of historic elements, and it begins to create a very dynamic feeling for the community. You can be progressive without forgetting your history. The fact that you know your history and have preserved your history by nature makes you progressive. So being able to tie those two together is extremely important. So this could be the cover of a shopping and dining guide, and we actually are really pleased. Sean went through and created a vector version of a map of your historic core. So you will be able to have that resource with the streets and the buildings drawn on it, ready to go for you to populate the information on that shopping and dining guide. Now, from that, Randy does a fantastic job with these renderings where we take images. This is one of the gateway signs into the community. And with a very, very simple panel update, you can turn that over to replicate and set that tone.
Go back. Can you go back?
Yeah. So before and after. And it just simply shows you how you can kind of take that and set the stage at those gateway points. Now, I will say this though. A little story about gateway signs. Communities all over the place do this the exact same way. They go out to their corporate limits and they drop down a gateway sign. Welcome to so-and-so. And then they're in any other communication. We're glad you're here, now you're on your own. It's kind of like greeting somebody at the front door and not telling them where the bathroom is. So what we want you to think about is we want you to think about the implementation of a community-wide wayfinding system. After you greet people with the gateway signs, you then follow up with a series of signs, everything from what we call trailblazer signs. These trailblazer signs are very, very simply designed signs. They are intended mainly to communicate to vehicular traffic, and they are intended to have 3 and at the most 4 destinations per sign. These signs are designed to what's called the MUTCD standard, which is the standard put out by the United States Department of Transportation. They put out an unbelievable manual that I downloaded the PDF onto my iPad, and my iPad was actually 7 pounds heavier when it was done. That's how big this thing is. But they prescribe exactly how high the letters should be and all that kind of stuff. Now, the thing with these signs is you can't just have one size. The size need to be appropriate for the width of the road and the speed of the traffic. So as you get into the core of the community, the signs are probably going to scale down, and they're going to be intended to communicate both to vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. Now, the great thing about signs, the bad thing about signs is they're expensive. The great thing about signs is they have 2 sides. So one of the things that we've started to see happening lately is on the back side of these trailblazer signs, we're putting healthy walking trail information where people can then keep track of distances as they walk around a designed area. And communities are starting to get grants from hospital systems for healthy programs to help pay for these signs. So now all of a sudden something that used to be purely on public sector investment has now found some ways that it can be a shared investment. That's one of the big things that happened along the Swamp Rabbit. It's one of the main reasons that the hospital system donated over $100,000 to help pay for the Swamp Rabbit, was because they were angling that it would help to promote healthy lifestyles. Now, they put a brewery at the end of it and Travelers Rest, so I'm not sure exactly how well it worked out, but still. From there, one of the other things to remember is your city limits are not the only place that you have permission to announce arrival. It is absolutely okay to remind people of the special place that they've come into, especially where you yourself can tell when the community begins to change character. And in the historic core of Williamston, there's a very, very easy to define area that feels different. And it would be extremely appropriate. Now, granted, you would not want to go and replicate the same scale gateway that you have out at your city limits. But it would be extremely appropriate to have a pole-mounted sign welcoming people into historic Williamston. So being able to do those welcome signs would be good. Parking signs, I gotta tell you, you are probably the first community that I've worked in over 6 years that I didn't have somebody complain about not having enough parking. Now, I'm sure some of you that own businesses out there would say there is that problem. Parking signs are a huge part of this overall system. Communities typically have one of 3 parking problems. We want you to have a parking capacity problem. We want you to have more customers than you have spaces for them to park. Most of the time what ends up happening is the mindset of your consumers is such a convenience mindset that if they cannot park directly in front of their business, then we have a parking problem. That's not actually a parking problem, it's a consumer mindset problem. Has anybody been to the Target on Woodruff Road? Some of you. Okay. Target on Woodruff Road in Greenville is the perfect example. If you look at that Target, they've got an entire set of parking all out in front of that. And many times if you go when it's busy, you might have to park 3/4 of the way out of the parking lot to be able to find a space. They have 1 row of parking right around the side, and it's always open. People can't see the front door from there. So for some reason, there's this disconnection. We want to cultivate an environment where the consumers are more motivated to park and browse. Greer has done it, Travelers Rest has done it, Pickens is working on it. You're seeing those things happen all over, and that's really exciting. Having pole-mounted maps in conjunction with your street banners, this gives additional information as you put infrastructure into place with trail systems, you enhance sidewalks, you want to enhance walkability. All those things are good, but if you do not educate the pedestrian into the places that they can go, then you're missing the opportunity for them to truly experience the resources you have. And then again, even looking at things like street blades and being able to incorporate graphics into those street blades. Now from that, we always like to look at different designs for banners. Banners, I think a lot of times people think that street banners are just pretty. That's their job, to be pretty. They have multiple jobs. First of all, if you're a community that you feel like needs some, let's say, cosmetic help, believe it or not, street banners can make buildings look a whole lot better when they're out there covering them up. Now, I will say, in my humble opinion, Williamston doesn't really have that problem like a lot of the communities we work in. Are there some facades that need some care? Sure. But from an outside point of view, you are not a community that conveys this overwhelming sense of neglect. It's that constant need to maintain. We've got a couple different variations that you could use for overall community banners. This blue one is a great example of the use of solid color backgrounds. Being able to use solid color backgrounds to help educate people about cross nodes or about continuations of the district. One of the things that's interesting about your historic core is you have different sections, and those different sections are disconnected by areas that lack a little bit of development. You could use continuous banners to help educate people that although it might feel like it's stopped, there's more for you to see. And then of course, there's always an option to be able to use these banners to help promote events. Now, Sean made a great point today. If you're going to do this, probably don't want to put dates on there. Banners are pretty expensive to only have one-time uses. Now in Greenville, and I know Greenville's not a great example because of how much they put into it, but Greenville changes their banners pretty much every month. And they use those banners to communicate about the events. Now, with these, there are 3 main ways that you can have these produced. Most of them are canvas and they're screen printed on. Those last the longest, but you have to be very sensitive to the amount of colors you use. So both of these are showing some examples that you might be able to use as those. Now, the Boo in the Park, that might be one that would be printed on vinyl, and it would be printed full color on vinyl. Finally, there's also a new technology out where they're actually printing banners on Tyvek, which is that fabric they wrap houses in. Those are for extreme temporary use, and if you are having one-time events that you want to promote, Tyvek banners might actually provide a good opportunity for you. The water tower. One of the South's greatest advertising opportunities. Every community you go to, I cannot tell you how many times I've worked in communities because they decided that they need to go through a branding process that was all originated because they needed to repaint their water tower. Why are water towers important? Water towers are important in the South because many times they are the tallest structure on the skyline. And because of that, they provide an orienting element between people and a place. So being able to stake a claim to that water tower, you all have some towers that are painted, but we just wanted to show you what that might look like if you applied the logo there, and Randy showed a great treatment where actually the bottom of the tower all got one of those blues, and then he said he wanted to make it realistic. That's why he didn't take all the rust off of it. So wanted to set the stage for what it could look like. Now, Randy, I might get you to help me on this one because this next one is pretty exciting. Actually, why don't you come up because I want you to give the details.
Go ahead and click. Well, I think everybody knows what this is. And in many ways, we have two of these in what I consider kind of the gateways or the entryways into your core downtown area. They feel like triangles to me. I don't know if that's technically their shape, but does everybody know where we are in this photo? Yeah. And then you have a very similar one. It's almost inverted at the other end. I think there's a church barbecue place there. And so those two places really feel experientially like when you're driving in, as you know, especially the fact that you're kind of on this angle. And so it deflects your vista, and then boom, you feel like you really landed in your downtown core. And so just like Ben talked about, this whole notion of gateway arrivals into the community as a whole, you know, where you currently have the stone pilasters, and you know what I'm talking about? You need to do the same thing every time you enter a different kind of district into your town. And so, just like you want to make a good first impression there, you also need to make yet again another good first impression as you arrive to the downtown core. All right, the next thing, just to kind of set up what we're looking at the moment, obviously we have this bend in the road. This parking lot to the left, thankfully, has, and Blake, I really regret that I didn't see your plan. You probably have a better plan than I'm about to illustrate. But anyway, it has,
Well, it's that.
what's that?
He said probably.
Yeah. It has generous parking, but thankfully it has two curb cuts, actually 3 or 4 if you count the ones on the other side. And so the one that we're looking at, does anybody know what we say curb cut? Basically, it's the driveway. Okay. The problem with that is it's right on the apex of the curb, and so it's kind of a bit dangerous. If you were to remove that and extend the grass, you would introduce sort of a foreshadowing of a gateway treatment that you would actually pick up a couple of parking spaces, and you would make it quite a bit safer. Right. Number 2, we've got this billboard, City of Williamston. If you can get a hold of that billboard, get a hold of that billboard and convert it to your messaging and not Subway's messaging. We love Subway, or maybe you tag team with Subway and do a joint billboard that celebrates them and the town itself. Now the other signs, you know, thankfully the one below can be removed, the other one probably needs to remain since it houses a business. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And so some of the treatments that we've employed is, again, if you see, if we extend the green space, then you have a much bigger and broader lawn to receive a treatment. I'll tell you straight up, you want to know where I got that little stacked stone arched element? Right in your park. It's that little semicircular place. I think there's a pulpit in it. And so that to me feels very authentically Williamston because it borrows from your indigenous materials. You put some statuary letters on the side saying, "Welcome to historic downtown Williamston." And the thing I really like about it is what it does to your view. It just naturally draws your eye and pushes you to the right towards the downtown. Put just a little bit of landscaping behind it and some especially ideally colorful flowers in the foreground. And then you can see over here in the foreground we have the Trailblazer sign that just gives the destinations. I would love for you want that little splash of red dust to sort of define the roadway. So let's just, and then finally, so there's before and then here's after. And I forgot to notice the banners. And unfortunately, I wish I'd had some of your later banners, but at the time when this was done, we only had the blue ones. But even that splash of blue, it's amazing what it does sort of visual. Oh yeah, we've got the billboard, which you'll see the full-blown ad for that. But again, if you could capture that, welcome to downtown historic Williamston, that would be a great thing. We actually worked in Marion, South Carolina, and they had a similar thing where you go into the town, you split off, and at the bottom was their welcome to historic Marion, and at the top was a billboard that was unfortunately Northborough Beach had purchased. And so right above, 4 times as big as their welcome to Marion was go visit Myrtle Beach. It's like you need to own that billboard if it's going to stay. Thank you.
And then finally, just kind of coming around the corner and just kind of showing, these are images from your town, you know, and being able to kind of set this tone with a confident layout, confident statement, and being able to share some of the experiences that you have. And I mean, I will say, Randy assembled these ads for us, and, you know, he sat there and he was like, can I do an ad that features the cemetery? It's like, absolutely. I mean, those elements are the elements that make you all so unique, and the opportunities that you have to share. As long as you take notice of what it is that you are sharing with folks.
In Latin?
That went in before the brand statement. But again, showing off those different elements, and then also showing off the people, the faces. I cannot tell you, it's actually a great story. This past weekend, I took my family to a festival, and we walked up to this vendor, and he owns this company called Peg and All, and he makes these great like wood items and wax canvas and leather stuff. And I follow him on Instagram, but I'd never met the guy before. But I swear, I felt like I was meeting a celebrity. And it was not until later that I actually realized, you know, he's not actually a celebrity. But because of that relationship that I had, because of seeing those people and then seeing him in person, it made this impact. And to be honest with you, that impact that it made converted into me purchasing something from him. Because I felt like I knew, then I saw him in person, and I wanted to capture that experience. And believe it or not, that resonates very, very much with today's consumers. Being able to highlight the people, being able to highlight the homes, the housing stock, the great institutions of faith that you have here in the community. Again, you got the good end of that. It is, I think, the thing that with every person that we came across, Rocky included, we had these really great stories. And, you know, Rocky was in a meeting with some folks with economic development focus, and we had a very real conversation. And I just kind of made the comment, I said, you know, the fact is that for the most part, if somebody is going to come to Williamston and start a business or move a business, chances are there's already going to be a connection. There's going to be a flame there. And we have to figure out how we can fan those flames. It's not realistic to just act like, oh, well, we're going to go out on the open market and we're going to find somebody to move their business out of nowhere. Because chances are the best argument that you're going to be able to make to them is a low-cost argument. You're going to figure out some way that being here is going to afford them cost savings. Well, what kind of corporate citizen does that make them? Where when you have somebody with personal connections, who every time they hire somebody else, they're creating a job in their hometown. I think that that's a realistic mindset. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be people from outside that choose Williamston. It doesn't mean that those people aren't valid or won't come in and be connected with the community. But what it does mean is that the future of Williamston is here already. And we were really, really pleased when we met with the high school students yesterday at how many of them seemed to know of the values that this community had to offer. And even though they might not come right out and say, yeah, we're going to move back to Williamston, I felt like everybody in that room yesterday said they were interested in at least staying in the region. Isn't that right? I mean, they were planning on going away to school, doing 2-year and then going to a 4-year or going straight to 4-year or whatever. But they knew that once that was done and they started thinking about families and adult life, that there was something about this region that would draw them back. And I thought that was really telling. Being able to kind of show off that texture, just some of the great businesses of the community, the great opportunities that you all have. Yeah, we have there too. But again, just, being able to show the community itself through an outsider's point of view is extremely important. Being able to share those different angles, and then, we know that we took the word river with a little bit of liberty there, but hey, still. Being able to kind of take those images and really say, that's your home. Who wouldn't want to live in a place that looks like this? So with that, I want to tell you a couple more things about next steps, and then I'd like to open it up for your thoughts and your comments. Again, like I say, I'm pretty sure that this is a little bit like drinking out of a fire hose. But I hope that, at the very least, I hope that you can see the strategy that we're going for. I hope that you can see that we did our best to listen and to combine together those values that you have both for your past and your stories of your past, and combine them with the opportunities for the future. Now, we did a couple other things that we weren't really able to show, but we wanted to position the Main Street organization to also best catalyze growth and nurturing of the visitor market in the upstate. So we wanted to go ahead and purchase a website for them so that they could start to craft a visitor-oriented message that's not always appropriate to exist on a town website. Sometimes you've got to be able to get in and talk about businesses and things like that is a little more tenuous to happen on a town website. So we went ahead and we purchased historicwilliamston.com, and we've paid for 5 years of domain for that and a year hosting. We got it loaded up with WordPress, we got a theme loaded on it, and we've already started putting together some of the infrastructure so the organization can take that and run with it. Now, everything that you see becomes the communities. All the logos, all the photos, all the elements that we created. After a period of a couple weeks of refinement and conversations that you all can have, we're going to get our marching orders from Caroline as to this is how we want to tweak this is how we want to move forward. After we get those marching orders, we're going to create a style guide. That style guide document is going to tell everything about how to use this, how not to use it. It's going to define the typefaces, the colors, all the different elements. It's also going to show you, please don't make this pink and purple. It's going to kind of set those parameters. We will prepare every single logo and save them 6 different ways, so that you'll have all the different file formats that you might need. And then we're going to load all those up and make them available digitally, so it can be shared amongst the business community. And that simple link can give anyone access to those resources so they can professionally pass along or incorporate that imagery into their own messagery. So our goal really is to create a toolkit that will allow not just the organizations, but the business community as well, to embrace these and be able to incorporate them as they go out and convince customers to come back to Williamston and help, as events go on, promoting this community. So that's what we were able to do in the past day. we would love to open it up for your thoughts and your comments.
I'd like to, I can't believe that you did that in 24 hours. That amount of time is amazing.
Well, and I will say to that, we've been doing this a long time, and people often ask us why we take this process, because it's so different than the way that other companies might handle it. I believe that we take a very realistic approach to understanding the ability that many communities have to implement systems like this. So we truly believe that if we put the pressure on us to create a system that can expand, grow, be defined, and applied to all the different elements that we want to show in a time period like this, then it obviously has the foundation required for the community to then take it and begin implementing it. So it's almost a self-checking system. If there are things about what we create that are too difficult for us to take and expand, then we know we have to go back and retool that. And so we really do feel like it provides a product that's easy to grab and run with. And it will allow a community to start getting some visual successes when citizens and businesses might not always give as much credit as they should for some of the success that is a little harder to see. And so it gives us a way to kind of celebrate some of the good work that's been done. We, being professionals that do this all the time, we can come into the community and we can sit there and start rattling off what we see as, oh, I can see where they've done the streetscape project and they're doing this and this and this and trail system and that. And like we could make a pretty good list, but to the citizenry, nothing ever happens fast enough. We needed it done 3 years ago, So being able to celebrate those successes is important, but I really appreciate that. Anybody else? Yeah.
I can only work with those symptomatics given me.
I really feel like you did capture Williamston very well, and I really like the graphic that you put together. It's historic, but it's timeless, and it's not something that you feel like would get dated. The color selection was nice, and really, really nice job.
It took some things that we look at every day for granted and really made them nice. Especially like the brochure looking thing with even the cemetery. I would never thought you put a cemetery in.
Right.
I love the artery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
Yeah, we don't use that.
Well, you should have seen the first graphic that been used though.
It was an artery. I mean, hey, there's nothing like a little, don't be vain, Randy. Well, like I say, this is, I hope you can imagine, it can be a little stressful getting up in front of citizens and showing them our perception of the place that they live. We are really excited about what we came up with, but I'll be completely honest, I think that there was inherently, because of how many comments that I got in reference to some of the historical imagery that did exist, I felt like this probably would be a community that might have a little bit of trouble wrapping their arms around the icon that might be seen as being a little too contemporary. We tried to really land a lot of other traditional elements in that, but I feel like you all, the thing that you all offer, and I tried to kind of compare you to some of the other communities in the upstate that I feel like are doing really good things right now. And the thing, I kind of go back to that story that we kept being told about Mineral Springs Park and the role that it played as being one of the first public parks and the way that it was discovered. I mean, come on, we got 3 different discovery stories about how West Allen, found that spring, and all that is just kind of fun. And I don't know whether you realize it or not, but even to this day, things still have 3 different stories. We got 3 different versions of quite a few stories of things here in the community. And, you know, like they always tell us, it's like there's your story, my story, and the truth. And a lot of times they're all completely different. So I think that you all have got tremendous opportunity. You are, when I say that you're an unknown quantity, I really should be saying you're a hidden gem. I just don't say that because people say that all the time. So, you know, it's like you truly offer something that a lot of other places don't. And you have this unbelievable proximity to both Anderson and Greenville markets, but you also have just enough distance to be able to have maintained your own individuality as a place. And you have these great little communities of Pelzer and West Pelzer next to you that combined provide some really, really nice historical assets that can really kind of tell an overarching story of this part of the upstate that is a little different from some of the other parts of the upstate. So I'm excited for you. Hopefully that excitement and the things that we saw and the affinity that grew in us for Williamston, I really hope that that shows in what we presented tonight, because we think a lot of the place that you call home. And we are very excited and optimistic for you all. So with that, it is 7 o'clock on the dot. We promised we were going to shoot for an hour. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap it up from that end. The team's going to be here for a little bit, so if there's anything you'd like to ask about, if you want to see colors more true on the screen or anything like that, feel free to come up. But again, I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to extend my thanks to everybody from city staff, city council, and absolutely Caroline. She has done a fantastic job taking care of us. I can say, aren't necessarily always the easiest to take care of. We gave her a pretty hard time, but
She likes me, right?
yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Randy.
Hey, just a reminder, we recorded this tonight, so both the imagery and all the commentary, we're going to upload the whole QuickTime movie to YouTube. So if you've got friends, family,